Are we surprised? Are we actually surprised? A little over 3 years ago, I made a video titled, "Is Drag Race unfair towards queens whose first language is not English?" In it, in my high-pitched, so high-pitched, that it was low-key annoying rewatching that video back, I talk about, well, the mistreatment that queens whose first language is not English receive on Drag Race, specifically focusing on Hispanic queens, as back then, well, to my knowledge at least, there haven't been any other first language not being English queens that have been mistreated. Most, if not all, queens that fall into this category have expressed how difficult it is being on the show when they think and express themselves in one language, but in order to actually be on the show, compete on the show, and in that way further their careers, they have to use English. I think most people who fall into this category, me included, would tell you that they find it much easier to properly express themselves in their mother tongues, even though I would consider myself pretty good at using English, or Spanish even. Some of the queens on the show that fell into this category are Nina Flowers, Jessica Wilde, Yara Sofía, Madame LaQueer, and Kenya Michaels. Now, those are the 5 that I mentioned in the original video. I would also now like to add Plastique Tiara, who is not a native Spanish speaker, but who also expressed trouble and was criticized for not faking an American accent when speaking, in English of course, in high-stress situations. Nicky who was low-key made fun of by one of the producers for not being able to pronounce a certain word in English the way that the people in the US pronounce it. And due to what happened this week on the show, which ties it all together, Alyssa Hunter. Something interesting that I want to point out is that most of the queens that I mentioned were taken out of the competition in an acting challenge, or just in general in a challenge where there was talking and the use of English involved. Nina Flowers on season 1. Even though she had the best track record, even though she was the fans' pick to win, and even though she had the coolest and most versatile and polished drag on that season, lost because she did not fit the identity of the spokesperson for the show that gives RuPaul vibes. Now, this is not me talking out of my ass. It's all said and shown there on the season. I made a whole video about it. But then also, Nina was later eliminated in a comedy/impersonation challenge on All Stars 1. Jessica Wilde was eliminated after an infomercial challenge. Madame LaQueer was eliminated after an acting challenge. Kenya Michaels was eliminated after Snatch Game the first time. Plastique Tiara was eliminated after an improv challenge. Nicky was eliminated after an acting challenge. Alyssa Hunter was eliminated after an acting/improv challenge. The only one that does not fit here is Yara Sofía, who went home on look and performance-related challenges, all 3 times that she competed in. But an exception to a rule does not make the said rule null and void. Also, Yara is in a league of her own, because as Alexis Mateo said, she speaks both Spanish and English and she cannot understand her in either of the 2 languages. So basically, I'm right. I'm also the first person that will say that who we see on the show are not the actual people that, portray these characters. They're just like fractions of them, of their personalities, highly edited into some sort of a story that can be followed by a child. Plus, each queen is cast because she has a certain characteristic that producers can create a story around. Thus, it's kind of in the nature of the show that some of these queens will be shown as stereotypes. We, as clever viewers, should know this and avoid reacting upon these stereotypes, because we also should not do this in real life either. However, and even so, Drag Race loves to represent certain groups of people as solely those stereotypes. For example, the Hispanic queens. They are great to the show when Ru asks them to be the fiery hot Latinas, but if those queens ever choose to dip their toes into the said stereotype in order to make it easier for them to compete in a challenge on a show that does not allow them to be 100% themselves, well, then sashay away, you an original, offensive, racist piece of shit. Alyssa Hunter went through this exact same thing in the 4th episode of season 14. In this episode, the queens were tasked to come up with and film fake scenes for a season 14 fake teaser trailer. From the start, after being picked by Maddie to be in her team, Alyssa expressed that her ideas were not being heard and/or understood by her teammates. That's red flag number one. This is on the queens, not on the show, this part. However, it was kind of unanimous on both teams that the queens would play highly exaggerated versions of themselves. So nobody's listening to your ideas, nobody's trying to apply your ideas onto the ultimate product or help you work on them so that you're comfortable with what you're doing. What would you do? Yeah, you will most probably dip into the stereotypical side. I mean, come on. Sasha Velour, a queen of Jewish-Ukrainian descent, on season 9, in order to be funny, dipped into the Russian stereotype and a vaguely Russian accent. And I know this may surprise many people from the US that watch me, but Ukrainian and Russian is not the same thing. Basically, you do what you know could work and dumb it down to the fullest. Georgia's, another Hispanic queen, was also shown as having trouble in the challenge, at least in the preparations of the challenge, just like Alyssa. And I would assume that it, to a degree, had to do with the minimal language barrier. Now, this barrier does not have to be massive, it could be the thinnest of barriers, but it's still an obstacle when it comes to full self-expression. Alyssa goes and does her thing in the challenge, admittedly does not do well, and she ends up in the low tier of placements. Now, if you have not caught up yet, queens that are not native English speakers are at an immediate disadvantage on the show that heavily focuses on comedy, acting, and improv challenges nowadays. Her placement was unfair. When talking about her, the not at all hilarious Ross Matthews says,
I think Alyssa fell into that trap that a lot of queens fall into where they go to their crutch and they do it at 100.
In reference to her going quote-unquote Latina with her character. As if that's not something that they, on the show, only value when it comes to any Hispanic queens. This kind of comment is borderline disgusting. It's also a very interesting comment given who the other queens in that low tier were, Kerri, Colby, and Kornbread Jeté. Now, why do I say that this is interesting? Well, because in a way, looking through the main judge's demented point of view, the two of them also relied on crutches. Kerri relied on being high femme and pretty for all of her comedy, which, you know, in a certain stretch of imagination, is a crutch if she's a trans woman. You know, hoping to rid herself of any masculinity in her. Kornbread relied on eating jokes because she's an obese queen. That's a crutch as well. Kerri was kind of criticized for it by Michelle. I say kind of because we know Drag Race only values the traditional view of high femininity. And Kornbread was actually criticized for relying on a crutch, but not by the main judges, but rather by Lonely Love, a guest judge that episode. Now, why is that? Well, because the show is afraid to criticize trans queens so as to not seem transphobic, and because they're afraid to criticize any obese queens so as to not seem fatphobic, even if the said critiques would have nothing to do with their identities or body sizes. The nonsense and the mistreatment of Alyssa does not end there. So Alyssa Hunter is put into the bottom with Kerri. Kerri, in the confessionals, straight up says that she does not know how she's going to move in the dress that she was wearing because she couldn't damage it.
I am definitely devastated. I'm also thinking, how in the hell am I gonna lip sync in this dress? Because if I mess up this dress, I will literally, y'all will lose me. I won't be found, I'll be dead.
And here's the deal. None of this would be a problem if she was not the one who was outperformed by Alyssa. Alyssa not only embodied the J-Lo song, but she also mixed well moments of dancing, moments of just like strutting on a stage, and moments of just like being sexy, giving that whole vibe of her character. Yes, her money gun prop failed, but her performance as a whole did not, because she was able to adapt and still make it work. However, editing-wise, they tried to make us believe every way possible that Alyssa was fucking up left and right. For fuck's sake, Kerri was shocked to have been saved. Yes, saved. The show just wanted whatever reason to disregard and eliminate the foreign queen and keep the queen that will give them brownie points. Up until that point, Alyssa was getting the villain edit. Whenever she would talk, there would be the shady background music. Literally, no matter what she would be saying. And why is this? So that when in this episode she loses, and I'm using that word very lightly here, to Kerri, we root against Alyssa and for Kerri. Brownie points. And that's it. That's the video. This whole mistreatment of foreign queens on Drag Race low-key surprises me nowadays. We know how opportunistic the show and RuPaul are. How come they did not try to give a proper spotlight to their Hispanic queens, or their foreign queens in general, during the whole nonsense Trump was spouting during his presidency, and during the rise of neo-fascism? And also, why did they, and why are they still pushing the notion that US patriotism is great and borderline necessary and not, well, horrible? Just think about it. Thank you for watching.